mostly now it's a farming town. And people made their living farming for a number of years. And then it got to the place, they started with heavy-duty farming equipment. So therefore, a lot of people that made their living farming, they no longer had a job. So then people started migrating away, and the town got smaller because people had to leave the area in order to maintain a livelihood. And they did that. And some of the people were fortunate enough to get a job in a little town, Roanoke Rapids, that's about 20 miles away. Some worked there. Some of the men even commuted all the way to Newport News area to work in shipyards, which is about an hour and a half or 2-hour drive from here. But they would pool the ride and ride together, therefore they could kind of save a little bit on transportation. But that's really how the people survived. And most of the younger people that finished high school, when they went away to college, they didn't come back to Seaboard because they had to go where they could get work. So therefore it made Seaboard become smaller and smaller and not a convenient place to live. And at that time, period that I'm really talking about, the schools weren't integrated. So therefore, that was a financial strain because you had to maintain separate schools. And with money being scarce, the school system itself wasn't that great. You got the basics, but that's about all. And the people that could afford it, they sent their kids to private schools outside of the area. So therefore, with a low income and a low tax base, the schools were never that great based on the tax base in the county. And the whole county, not just Seaboard, was farming. Since then, after they got all this commercialized farming equipment, they kind of changed and people started doing more public work. So one of the few things we got in was at that time, it was, I think, International Paper. And some of the men and women got to work there. So that kind of gave us a better income base. And I was one of the few that went away to college and came back. I come from a large family, a family of 10. And out of the 10, I'm the only one that worked in Seaboard. So that gives you an idea about how the young people migrated away. Now, some of my sisters and brothers that didn't attend college, they migrated to bigger cities like New York. And when I say my family, I really have a reference to all of the families. That was the trend. And it was the same thing with the old black families as well as your white families. They needed jobs too. Because most of the families here, the white families, their money came from farming also. So they had to migrate away. So it wasn't just one particular race going through this. It was like the whole community. But take my own family in there. I had one sister that went to college in Durham. And she came in, she worked for a few years, and she got her master's in guidance. And at that time, North Carolina didn't have guidance counselors in the high schools. So then she got a job in Durham, North Carolina. So that's where she stayed. She married, raised a family there. And my other younger sister, she got a job in Fayetteville. She ended up marrying a soldier for Fort Bragg, so then she moved all around. I'm just trying to give you an idea how people migrated from Seaboard, and the base that could have helped Seaboard develop and grow, they were no longer here. So that's kind of the routine of Seaboard, and it was all families. Because at that time, it's true that blacks were extremely poor, including my family, but the whites were too. They depended on the farm. We thought maybe they had a little more because they owned the land, but we had an old saying that they're land poor. If you know what I'm talking about, you own a lot of land, but it's not making money. Farmland, you might have a forest on the farm, but how often can you see a timber? So the land is not bringing in a lot of revenue. So that was the kind of gist of Seaboard. And then we had a lot of little local grocery stores. I know as a child, we had 3 grocery stores, but what kept the grocery stores going was the people that farm ran credit at the store. And you might pay your bill off once a year or twice a year. And when the farming went out, the grocery stores had to close, like a fun. So that's the way it really was. We had the same thing with service stations. We had 2 service stations as a child growing up, but it got to a place everybody working outside of Seaboard, they gassed up while they were out. So when you knew anything, the service stations were closing. And that's about the gist of how we was trying. And then William came in. William's father lived outside of Seaboard, like all of us migrated away. Maybe I should say Mr. Long, but we always call him William. I get back to that later on, why it's William. But anyway, they lived away, and he went to college. When he graduated, he was looking for a job, so he had to leave the area. And then when Williams came to Seaboard, he bought a house with the intentions of moving his mother and father here. And his father was like most older people, I'm not going to leave my home. So it took a year or 2 for him trying to persuade him. Well, the father passed before he ever moved to Seaboard. So my mother considered herself raising William because she worked for William's grandparents. And she knew William's father from a little boy up. And they always stayed in contact. And he was telling Mother about bought the house, and Mama was telling, don't you sell your house? And I was sitting there laughing. I said to myself, Mom, young people now, a house doesn't mean anything. They migrate all over the world. So owning a house is no big deal anymore. To her, that was one of your main objectives, to grow up, buy your little house, raise your family. But anyway, she persuaded him. He always said, don't sell your house. So he didn't. And by coming back, that drew him back to Seaboard. And you know, his roots on his father's side. And William's mother seemed to have adjusted and liked the area. So that's what kind of drew him back. And then he became interested in the town and tried to help do something to kind of make it, vitalize it a little more. And that's when he started the trust.